Imagine being betrayed and abandoned by your husband, and then being humiliated at work every day just for doing your job right. This was Ava's life, a mother whose world was shattered after being cheated on and left behind. With her heart in pieces, she had to find a strength she never knew she had. That's when she met Alexander, an arrogant millionaire and restaurant mogul. Disguised as an ordinary man, what neither of them imagined was that their unexpected encounter would be the start of a journey of healing, love, and above all, a breathtaking comeback. If you love stories of resilience, stories that make your heart race and cheer for the underdog, make sure to subscribe, leave a like, and hit that notification bell. And now brace yourselves. The story is about to begin. Late that cloudy afternoon, a light rain tapped against the windows. Ava stepped off the bus with a paper grocery bag in her arms. She had left the twins, Leo and Max, with her mother, promising she'd be back soon. She wanted to prepare a surprise for Richard. She wanted to believe there was still an us worth saving. In her rush, she had carefully chosen each ingredient: fresh pasta, his favorite wine, and even rice pudding, a dessert she didn't even like but had learned to make just to see him smile. Her steps, though tired, felt light. It was as if something beautiful was about to happen. She'd been planning this for days. A simple gesture, but full of love. After so many arguments, silent nights, and distant gazes, Ava believed this dinner could rekindle something between them. Arriving at their apartment building in New York, she walked up the stairs with hope in her chest, her heart pounding. Maybe today would be the day they reconnected. She turned the key carefully, trying to be quiet for the surprise. But she stopped. The door was already unlocked. She entered slowly, taking off her shoes to avoid making a sound. She left the bag in the kitchen. But a strange silence hung in the air, heavy, almost suffocating. And then she heard it. Muffled laughter, moans, voices. One was unmistakably Richard's. The other was female. Lustful, too intimate to be anything else. Ava's body froze. The blood in her veins seemed to stop. Every step toward the bedroom was torture. And the closer she got, the clearer the truth she didn't want to see became. The half-open door revealed what her heart already knew, but was fighting to deny. There before her was Richard, the man she loved, with another woman in their bed. Ava didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't run. She just stood there, as if the world had stopped along with her. "Richard!" Her voice came out weak, a whisper broken by pain. Richard turned, his face a mask of shock, his body naked. The woman beside him scrambled to cover herself. "Ava, wait. It's not what you think." His voice was trembling, desperate. Ava, still standing at the doorway, let out a short, bitter, pained laugh. "It's not?" she murmured, her eyes welling up. "Then help me understand, because it looks like I understood perfectly." Richard got up quickly, trying to hide behind the sheet in shame, but she had already looked away. The world around her seemed to spin, the floor unstable, her heart pounding like a drum of despair. With firm steps, Ava went to the closet, pulled out a suitcase, and started throwing his clothes inside. No folding, no care, no mercy. Richard approached, his voice still trembling. "Ava, please listen to me. It was a mistake. It only happened today, I swear." She stopped, lifting her tear-filled eyes to his. "It's only today because I came home early, right? And what about the days I came home late? After leaving our sons with my mom and working until I was exhausted, believing you were waiting for me? What were you doing then? What else didn't I see, Richard?" He lowered his head. Silence. Ava zipped the suitcase shut with a sharp tug, shoved it against his chest and pointed to the door. "Get your things and get out of my house." Her voice was firm now, no longer trembling. Richard tried to get closer, but she took a step back. "It's over. You destroyed what we had, but you won't destroy the woman I am." The woman in the bed, embarrassed, dressed hastily. Richard, with no arguments left, picked up the suitcase, his face defeated, and walked through the living room under Ava's icy gaze. She stood still, listening to the sound of the door slamming behind him. Alone, but somehow more whole than before. Ava went to the kitchen, looked at the untouched grocery bags, and finally let the tears fall. The surprise she had prepared with so much love had lost all meaning. As Richard walked down the stairs with the suitcase in his hands, Ava, on the other side of the window, took a deep breath. It was the end of a chapter. She grabbed her purse and left in silence, walking to her mother's house. On the street, the rain fell softly. When she opened the door, she found the twins running toward her, their little arms outstretched. She hugged them tightly, as if they were her true fortress. Ava walked slowly into her mother's living room, her eyes still red. Her mom, sitting in an armchair with the twins playing nearby, looked up and understood everything without a word being said. "Honey," her voice was sweet but firm. "What I feared has happened, hasn't it?" Ava took a deep breath, trying to hold back the tears. "Mom, I left work early. I wanted to surprise Richard. I bought wine, fresh pasta, Sivan rice pudding, which I've never liked." Her voice broke. "And when I got home, he was with someone else." Her mother closed her eyes as if confirming an old suspicion. "I already suspected, Ava." She looked up, surprised. "What do you mean, Mom?" "The way he treated you. Always distant, always making excuses. You would smile and he would just stare into space. Didn't you ever notice?" Ava wiped her tears with her hand. "I thought he was just more reserved in his own world." Her mother shook her head. "No, honey, he was cold. You gave your all and he just took. I didn't say anything before because I know you wanted to believe. You were fighting alone for something that had already sunk, and I could only wait for you to see it." Silence filled the room for a few seconds, until Ava whispered, "I just wanted it to work out." Her mother held her hand firmly. "I know, but my daughter, it wasn't you who failed. He was the one who didn't know how to value you." The twins, not understanding the gravity of the conversation, ran to Ava and hugged her legs. She bent down, holding them in her arms, and smiled through her tears. "At least I have you too, my greatest gifts." Her mother smiled, stroking her daughter's face. "And you'll always have me too. Don't worry." Ava hugged her mother tighter, feeling a relief she hadn't felt all day. Her mother held her hands, her gaze worried. "Honey, what now? You alone with the boys, the bills, the daycare?" "All of it." Her voice trembled with concern. Ava took a deep breath, wiping her tears. "Mom, I'm not giving up. Even if I have to work double shifts at the restaurant, I'll figure it out." Her mother looked at her, her eyes misty with a mix of pride and pain. "You don't deserve this, Ava. Not after everything you did for him." "No, I don't," she replied firmly. "But my sons deserve the best of me." The twins came closer, grabbing the hem of her shirt. Ava smiled, even with a broken heart. "For them, I'll do anything." Her mother hugged her again, as if wanting to protect her from the whole world. And in that moment, even feeling the weight of a mountain on her shoulders, Ava knew she wasn't completely alone. Later, with the house quiet, Ava tucked the covers over the twins. They slept peacefully, oblivious to the storm that had just broken over their mother's life. She kissed each of their foreheads and whispered softly, "Mommy's here. I'll always be here." In her own room, Ava sat on the edge of the bed. The tears finally flowed freely. Holding a photo of the boys as babies, she murmured, "I don't know how, but I'm going to make it. For you, I'll go to the ends of the earth." She closed her eyes, allowing herself to cry in silence. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, a man stared out the window of a luxurious office. Alexander Martins, cold in business, feared by many, but tonight, something was unsettling him. He took a deep breath, placed his hands on the windowsill and murmured to himself, "Tomorrow I'll handle this myself." He decided that the next day he would leave his expensive suits behind. He would anonymously enter one of the most modest restaurants in his chain. He wanted to see with his own eyes what the reports never showed. The next morning the sky dawned grey. An exhausted Ava was dropping. The twins offered daycare before rushing to another shift. At the same time, Alexander parked his car 2 blocks away from the restaurant. Simple jeans, a worn-out t-shirt, old sneakers. No one would guess that this man was a millionaire. Upon entering, Alexander was greeted by an atmosphere that, although rustic and with a certain charm, showed signs of neglect. The tables were misaligned, the floor had forgotten crumbs, and the air had a faint smell of old grease. He didn't have much time to observe. A soft, gentle voice brought him back to reality. "Good afternoon." "Welcome," said a young woman with a tired but sincere smile. "Right this way, please." Alexander nodded silently and followed her to a table near the window. As he sat, he observed the woman before him, fair skin, brown hair tied in a hasty bun, a worn uniform. There were dark circles under her delicate face, but her eyes were firm, welcoming, as if, despite the weight of the world, she still believed kindness was a duty. "I'll be right back with the menu, okay?" She walked away and he followed her with his eyes. In a few minutes, it became clear that this waitress was the one keeping the dining room afloat. She ran from table to table, taking orders, serving dishes, clearing glasses, apologizing for delays, all by herself. Behind the counter, a manager with a stern face watched everything with disdain. He shouted orders, pointed out flaws, but didn't lift a finger. It was Ava who kept the restaurant breathing. Alexander remained silent, observing, mentally noting every detail. And as the minutes passed, curiosity turned into admiration. She approached with a notepad in hand, a bead of sweat trickling down her temple. "Have you decided what you'd like?" "The daily special," he replied, noticing the fatigue in her expression. "Okay, I'll ask them to make it extra nice," she said with a half smile, and quickly walked away. When the plate arrived, Ava made sure to check. "Is everything all right?" "Yes, it's great." "Thank you," he said, almost surprised by his own politeness. Tired, Ava returned home with aching feet and a stained uniform. She climbed the stairs of her small apartment, and as she opened the door, 2 smiles ran towards her. "Mommy!" shouted the twins, Leo and Max, with their little arms outstretched. She knelt and hugged them tightly, as if that moment was the only one that truly mattered in the day. "Did you two make a mess for Grandma?" she asked, smiling. "I ate everything," said Leo. "I almost ate everything," added Max, his mouth smudged with chocolate. Ava laughed. These two were her whole world. Being a single mother was never in her plans, but when she found out she was pregnant, the children's father disappeared. Months later, she found out through social media that he was engaged and expecting a child with someone else. Since then, Ava had learned to survive on little. She forgot her own dreams and dedicated herself to her children with a strength she never knew she had. She took the job at the restaurant during a difficult month when there was no milk in the fridge and bills were piling up. It was supposed to be temporary, but temporary became routine. Every day she woke up early, made breakfast, dropped the boys at daycare, and ran to catch the bus. The pay was low, the manager demanding, but Ava stood out anyway with kindness, attention, and a sincere smile. The customers felt it. With her, it wasn't just service, it was care. And that's what caught Alexander's attention, even though she didn't know it yet. Hidden under the guise of an ordinary man, he returned to the restaurant as if drawn by something beyond operational flaws. He watched Ava in silence, sitting at different tables, paying attention to every gesture, every word, every sigh. It was impossible not to notice the weight she carried, the pressure from an indifferent manager, the staff shortage, the relentless pace, and yet the way she remained whole without complaining, just doing what needed to be done. With excellence. One particular afternoon was etched in Alexander's memory. An impatient customer started raising his voice, accusing Ava of forgetting an item from his order. He shouted, irritated, as if he were facing someone who had committed a crime. But Ava, with an almost supernatural calm, listened to everything, without interrupting. "I'm so sorry, sir," she replied, her voice sweet. "I'll fix it right away," and she did. No drama, no returning the rudeness, and in the end the customer left quietly, almost ashamed. Ava just went back to work, as if she hadn't just weathered a storm. Alexander was impressed. It wasn't just professionalism. It was a kind of quiet nobility, a choice every day not to become bitter, even when she had every reason to be. That's when he realized, for Ava, serving wasn't just a job. It was a silent mission. Every tray carried, every glass filled, every smile offered, everything seemed filled with a greater purpose. It was as if through these small gestures, she was trying to soften the harsh world around her. Alexander came back even more often after that, determined to understand every aspect of his customer's experience, and, especially, to get to know the waitress who had captivated him with her dedication. He returned, always in disguise, with the same watchful eye and the same desire to uncover the secret behind her, strained smiles. On that new afternoon, as the rain played on the windows, Alexander chose a table in the very back. Through the frantic comings and goings of the staff, his eyes soon found Ava. She moved with an aura of exhaustion that was, at the same time, the mark of her determination. Between orders and setbacks with colleagues, her face would light up as she served each customer with unwavering kindness. A short time later, the restaurant thinned out a bit. Ava took the opportunity for a quick break near the counter. Alexander, seizing the moment, approached with light steps, but with his heart racing, as if it were the first meeting of a long-dormant passion. "Excuse me," he said, his voice soft but firm, sounding unexpectedly familiar to the voice she heard daily. Ava, surprised, looked up to meet a friendly and warm gaze. "Do you need something?" she asked with the same delicacy she used with customers, but now with a hint of curiosity in her voice. "Actually, I'm here to ask for your advice," Alexander replied, with a sincerity that made the air between them vibrate. "You've worked so hard at this restaurant. It must be tough to balance everything, isn't it?" Ava blushed, surprised by the unexpected question. I try to do my best for everyone," she said as the words danced in her mind. "Sometimes I feel like exhaustion takes over, but I can't leave my customers hanging. They trust me," Alexander smiled. "The way you dedicate yourself, it's inspiring. If this place has a pillar, that pillar is you," he stated, looking directly into her eyes, as if wanting to carve her image into his very soul. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was a moment where two souls recognized each other, however briefly and without a name. As he walked away, promising to return, Ava stood there for a few moments, feeling an unexpected pang of hope. Deep down, Alexander knew he couldn't stay there just as the disguised man, living in the shadows. And she, in turn, began to think that perhaps that attentive gaze wasn't just that of a mere customer. The days passed, and Alexander continued visiting the restaurant in disguise, becoming more impressed with Ava with each visit. But on one particular day, the atmosphere was different. The restaurant was packed, with tables occupied in every corner, and Ava was rushing from one side to the other, trying to serve everyone with her usual warmth. From his usual table, Alexander watched her every move with concern. He knew that when the kitchen was overloaded with orders, Ava needed support. But it was clear that support wouldn't come from the manager. Then Robert, the manager, appeared. His posture revealed the kind of person he was, confident, perhaps too confident, as if he were always looking for someone to blame for his frustrations. Alexander felt the tension in the air as Robert approached Ava. "Hurry up, Ava, that VIP table is complaining again," Robert yelled, his aggressive tone drawing surprised looks from nearby customers. "I'm doing my best, Robert. The kitchen is swamped," Ava began to explain, but he cut her off, his voice dripping with contempt. "Your best isn't good enough. The wealthy customers are the reason this place stays open. If you can't handle them, maybe you should find another job," Robert said, his cold eyes fixed on hers. Va tried to maintain her composure, but Alexander could see the hurt in her eyes. She hesitated, searching for the right words, but Robert continued his assault. "And don't forget that serving loyal customers well is just a detail. What matters is the money they bring in. Now do your job right or you'll face the consequences." His words cut Ava like a knife. "Yes, sir, I'll do my best," she replied, her voice trembling slightly, clearly fighting back tears. Alexander couldn't stand the scene any longer. A knot formed in his stomach seeing Ava's pain. It was as if the injustice was screaming in his ears. "Robert, that's not fair," Alexander said loudly, standing up from his table. Even he was surprised by his own boldness. What would he do now? Reveal his identity or maintain his disguise? Robert turned to Alexander with the expression of someone who doesn't like to be interrupted by customers. "And who are you?" he asked with a sarcastic and dismissive tone. "Maybe I'm just another customer, but I'm not going to stand by and watch you treat an employee with such disrespect. She deserves much more than that," Alexander said, knowing his words were just the beginning of what he really wanted to say. Ava looked at Alexander, surprised and nervous. "You don't have to," Ava started, but Alexander silenced her with a gesture. "I'm sorry, Ava, I can't stay silent," he replied firmly. Robert looked from Ava to Alexander, as if assessing whether the situation was worth his attention. "Listen here, buddy. In this restaurant, I'm the one in charge. If you don't like it, the door is open. And as for Ava, she needs to learn to pay attention to the customers who really matter." A wave of anger washed over Alexander. "Do you really think someone's value is measured by money?" Alexander said, not hiding the disapproval in his tone. "If you can't even respect your own team, then you're the one who needs to rethink your priorities. Ava works hard every day and she doesn't deserve to be treated as disposable." Ava, still visibly shaken, felt a mix of gratitude and concern for Alexander. She didn't want him to become a target for someone as aggressive as Robert. "Please don't argue because of me," she said, placing a hand on his arm. "It's better to let it go." "No, Ava," Alexander said, determined. "Someone needs to speak up." Robert, however, was not willing to let the matter drop. "If you have a problem, you can leave and not come back. We don't need customers interfering in our business," Robert said, crossing his arms in a defiant stance. Alexander took a deep breath, aware that he was in a tricky situation. He wanted to help Ava, but it was clear that any move could make things worse. "You know, Robert, I can leave, but someone needs to say it. Maybe the problem isn't the customers, but how you treat the people who work here. One day, you'll have to face the mirror and ask yourself why no one can stand to stay." Robert tried to stay calm, but Alexander didn't flinch. He turned to Ava, who still looked shaken. "Ava, please remember how much your dedication means to everyone here. Your work is valuable. Don't let him make you feel otherwise." Robert was losing his patience. "That's enough! You're not here to lecture us. If you don't like my rules, leave," he retorted. "Maybe I should go," Alexander said, taking a step back. But the frustration in his voice was impossible to hide. "But I'm not the only one who sees what's happening here. Customers notice when an environment is toxic, and when they leave, it'll be too late. And it will be your fault." Ava felt her face flush. She didn't know whether to look away in shame or look at Alexander in gratitude. She was torn between fear of the consequences and the thrill of, for the first time in a long time, being defended by someone. "Alexander," she whispered, tense. "You could get into trouble. Robert, he doesn't watch his words or his actions." But Alexander didn't even blink. He remained firm, his eyes fixed on the manager. Maybe it's time someone put him in his place. "Ava, you deserve to work in an environment where you are treated with respect. What happens here is not normal, and it shouldn't be accepted." Robert took a step forward, his face red with anger. "That's it," he bellowed, completely losing his composure. "If you don't leave now, I'm calling security." Alexander took a deep breath, feeling the tension in the air like a stretched rope about to snap. He looked at Ava calmly. There was tenderness in his gaze, as if silently saying, "It's going to be okay. All right, Ava, I'll leave. But know this, I won't be intimidated by someone like you, Robert. What you're doing here is shameful. And if you have any dignity, you'll reflect on it before it's too late," Alexander said before walking out. As he left, he felt a mix of relief and frustration. Part of him wished he had done more, defended Ava even more firmly. But he knew what he did was a start. Inside, Ava stood motionless, her heart racing. She longed for a sense of security, but the scene had awakened something within her. Alexander's words made her think more deeply about her situation. How much longer could she endure such humiliation? She knew she needed to take action. Alexander wouldn't let this be the last time he visited the restaurant. He couldn't just walk away from the confrontation he had started. He had to find a way to help Ava, not just as a customer, but as someone committed to making the changes the place so desperately needed. After the embarrassing scene between Alexander and Robert, little changed at the restaurant. The atmosphere remained tense and Ava continued to deal with the usual pressure. But inside she was no longer the same. Something had awakened, a kind of quiet courage. The humiliation didn't break her. On the contrary, it made her see that she deserved more. And for the first time in a long time, she began to seriously think about it. Alexander, on the other hand, decided he wouldn't stay away. He wanted to continue supporting Ava, even in subtle ways. With each visit, Alexander paid more attention to the small details. On a particularly busy day, He saw Ava trying to manage a large table while dealing with a line of pending orders. Recognizing she was overwhelmed, Alexander decided to take a simple but significant step. "Hi, Ava," he greeted as she approached before she reached his table. "Is there anything I can do to help? I'd be more than happy to lend a hand." She seemed a little surprised. "Alexander, no, I don't want you to worry about it. It's just another busy day. Besides, the manager wouldn't like to see a customer in the kitchen." "I can handle it," Ava said, forcing a nervous smile. "Of course you can, but don't worry, Robert won't see me. How about I go to the kitchen and grab some drinks for you? That way it's one less thing for you to worry about," Alexander insisted, trying to reassure her. She hesitated for a moment, then agreed, a genuine smile spreading across her face. "All right, if you think you can handle it," she joked, her eyes twinkling. Alexander got up and went to the kitchen. When he returned, he was carrying a few drinks, and felt relieved to see the gratitude on Ava's face as he handed them to her. "Thank you, Alexander. You have no idea how much this helps," she said, clearly appreciating the simple gesture. Over time, Alexander made small gestures that, little by little, created a discreet bond between them. He would ask about Ava's children, wanting to know what they were up to at daycare, if she had any plans for the weekend, and she would talk about them with that sparkle in her eyes that only a mother has. Alexander listened intently, and without realizing it, began to look forward to these conversations more than he'd like to admit. On a quiet day, while Alexander was sitting at his usual table, he noticed Ava sitting in a chair in the corner of the restaurant, looking exhausted. "Hey, Ava, how are you feeling today?" Alexander asked, quickly getting up and walking over to her. "Oh, Alexander, you didn't have to leave your table for me," she replied, trying to hide her fatigue. "I'm here for you. You don't look well. Is the workload too heavy?" She sighed, seeming for a moment like she might open up a bit. "Just a little tired, you know," Ava said, with a weary but restrained look. It's hard to deal with the manager's attitude. The pressure never lets up. There's always something, and he never acknowledges anything. He only knows how to criticize. "That's not fair, Ava. You work so hard, and yet you're treated this way," Alexander retorted, feeling anger at the unfair treatment grow inside him. "I know. But what can I do?" Ava said, letting out a heavy sigh. "I need this job to take care of my kids. I can't just quit." Her voice was low, almost a confession. "Sometimes I just wish things were a little easier. For me and for them." Alexander looked at her, realizing his feelings for her were growing stronger with each moment. "You're an incredible woman, Ava. I admire your strength. I know it's not easy, but you're not alone. I'm here, and I'll do everything I can to help," he affirmed with sincerity. Ava gave him a soft smile, clearly touched by his words. "Thank you, Alexander. Having someone who cares really makes a difference. Being a single mom is a constant struggle. I have to keep it all together for my kids." Alexander paused, using this moment of connection to observe more closely. He began to notice how much pressure Ava faced every day, how it showed in her tired smile and the visible dark circles under her eyes. Yet she continued with an inner strength that he found deeply admirable. It inspired him to act. "Maybe one day you'll have your own restaurant, a place where you're truly valued," Alexander said, looking deeply into her eyes. "That would be a dream, Alexander. But it's hard to have faith in a dream when reality is so harsh," Ava replied, lowering her gaze as if the words were too heavy to carry her hopes. "What if I told you that every great achievement starts with a dream?" Alexander asked softly, taking her hand. "Have you ever thought about what your own restaurant would be like? How would you imagine it?" Ava looked at him confused. "A dream is nice, but in reality, just managing things here is hard enough. I'm not sure I could really do it." "I believe you could, Ava. You have an incredible talent for making people feel welcome, and that's something rare," Alexander said, encouraging her. "The way you take care of each customer is something most restaurant managers never learn." For a moment, Ava's expression lit up, and Alexander felt he had touched a part of her that was rarely revealed. "Do you really think I could do that? A place where people feel welcome?" she asked shyly, a spark of hope in her eyes. "Absolutely. You already do it every day. You deserve a place where your efforts are truly appreciated. Imagine your children growing up in a space where you're the boss where your vision is respected. That would be inspiring for them too, Alexander said, his tone full of encouragement. She looked at him with a mix of disbelief and emotion in her eyes. I don't have that kind of life. Alexander, Ava said, her voice a little shaky. For people like me, all of that is just a distant dream. Alexander shook his head, determined. Well, dreaming doesn't cost anything. What I mean is, it doesn't matter where you start. What matters is where you want to go, and I want to help you get there if you'll let me. Ava smiled, though her eyes were still a bit misty. That's very kind of you, Alexander. I'm not sure I deserve so much support. It's not about deserving. It's about potential. You have so much to offer, he replied with conviction, and I'll be here to support whatever path you choose. As they talked, Alexander realized that the connection between them was getting stronger. The empathy in his words, the exchanged glances, and even the moments of silence spoke more than 1,000 words. Thank you. Sometimes hearing that you have friends can make all the difference, Ava said, her confidence beginning to shine again. You're definitely not alone, Alexander replied, his heart warming at Ava's vulnerability. I'm here for whatever you need, and the more time I spend here, the more I see how special you are. In that moment, Ava smiled genuinely, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. Maybe I should dream a little more. And who knows, one day this conversation might become a reality. Alexander felt that little by little, they were building something that went beyond words. He had the means to help, and Ava, finally, was beginning to see that her dreams weren't foolish. That maybe together they could create a new path, a brighter, fairer future, not just for her but for everyone she loved. As they talked, Ava began to feel different, firmer, more confident. She was no longer just the waitress holding the world on her back. She was a woman who could, indeed, dream bigger. And when she looked at Alexander, she saw someone who didn't want to rescue her, but to walk with her, to encourage her to believe she deserved more. As the days went by, Alexander couldn't get Ava out of his head. Each visit to the restaurant only reinforced his need to do something to change her situation. He was increasingly concerned about the oppressive environment in which Ava worked, and Robert's arrogant attitude weighed on his conscience. Alexander needed a plan, but how could he address the issue without revealing his identity? Sitting at his usual table, Alexander began to jot down ideas on a napkin. He wanted to create a fairer environment for Ava and the team, but his mind was torn between acting quickly and revealing who he really was before he was ready. If I just fire Robert, what will happen to Ava? What if she rejects me? It could even make things worse for her, Alexander thought nervously, running his pencil over the paper. Meanwhile, Ava was facing her own battles. Stress was knocking at her door, not just at work, but at home too. The bills were piling up, and the boys' daycare fees had increased. How am I going to handle this? Ava murmured to herself as she prepared dinner, her thoughts swirling like a storm. How can I keep working without feeling so exhausted? One evening, Ava sat at the table with the twins, trying to keep a smile on her face as they played. Leo looked at her curiously and asked, "Mommy, why are you so serious? Isn't the restaurant fun?" Ava's heart sank at the question. "Oh, my loves, sometimes work can be tough, but that's okay, it's part of life," she tried to answer cheerfully, but her eyes betrayed the pressure she felt. After dinner, while the boys played on the couch, Ava decided she needed someone to talk to. She picked up the phone and called her friend Isabella, who had always been a source of support. "Hey, Isabella, can you come over for a bit? I really need a shoulder to cry on." Isabella arrived quickly and, upon seeing Ava, realized something was wrong. "What happened? You look overwhelmed," Isabella asked as they sat on the couch. "It's work. Robert is getting harder and harder to deal with, and I feel like I'm drowning. On top of that, the bills are piling up. I don't know how to handle it all," Ava confided, her voice trembling. "You need to talk to him, Ava. You can't go on like this. This pressure isn't good for you," Isabella said, concerned. "I know, but what if it costs me my job? I don't know what I'd do, even though I know I should be braver." "I'm scared," Ava admitted, uncertainty filling her eyes. Isabella held her friend's hand and looked into her eyes. "What you need most is support. You're not alone, and you need to remember that." Meanwhile, Alexander was talking to his best friend, Ryan, at a nearby bar. They often met when Alexander needed advice. Deep in thought, Alexander began to share what he was facing. "Ryan, I'm trying to figure out how to help an employee at my restaurant. She deserves to be treated so much better, and I feel terrible about what's happening. But what exactly are you planning to do? You can't just show up out of nowhere and reveal you're the owner. That could cause chaos," Ryan interrupted. "You need to think this through." "I know, but she's an incredible employee, and the manager treats her horribly. This is something I can change, but I don't want Ava to get hurt even more. She's struggling every day," Alexander explained, the frustration clear in his voice. "Have you considered that revealing your identity might be a bad idea? She might feel even more pressured or even betrayed if she finds out everything at once. Sometimes the truth is harder to handle than you think," Ryan advised, taking a sip of his drink. Alexander sighed, reflecting on his friend's words. "So what do you suggest? Should I just stand by and watch as things only get worse?" "No, but you need to be smart about it. Maybe you can help by making gradual changes. It doesn't have to be something dramatic. And when the time is right, you can tell her the truth," Ryan suggested, his tone a mix of concern and friendship. Alexander remained silent, pondering the advice Ryan had given him. There was truth in his words. Maybe there was a way to act without being abrupt. The real challenge would be figuring out how to make these changes without exposing his identity or causing more harm to Ava. Meanwhile, Ava was still deep in thought after her conversation with Isabella. She felt a little lighter, but the weight of her responsibilities still lingered. Sitting on the couch with her hands clasped, she looked at the twins who were now sleeping peacefully. "I want a better future for you," she murmured, feeling a spark of determination and hope rise within her. Deep down, she knew she needed to fight for more, not just for herself, but for her children as well. "Sometimes, you just need to take the first step." Ava remembered something Isabella had said. Could she do it? And how could she overcome the fear that held her back? In the days that followed, Alexander continued visiting the restaurant, paying even more attention to how Ava interacted with the customers. He noticed that many people at the tables in her section seemed comfortable and happy. Ava treated everyone with a smile and a patience that showed no signs of wearing thin. This only made Alexander admire her strength even more. "Hey, Ava," Alexander called out as he saw her approaching. "How was your day today?" "A little better, but work is still tough." "The pressure never stops," she admitted, sighing as she straightened the tables. "And at home, how are the boys?" Alexander asked, trying to steer the conversation to something lighter. "They're doing well, thank God. They've both started drawing, and Max is learning to count. They make me smile even on the hardest days," Ava replied, her face lighting up as she spoke about her children. "That's wonderful. Taking care of them is the most important thing. And it sounds like you're doing an amazing job," Alexander said, feeling the connection between them grow with each moment. Conversations like that made Alexander reflect even more on the plans that were beginning to take shape in his head. He could no longer pretend he didn't see it. Ava and so many others were trapped in an unfair reality, and that needed to change. The fight was just beginning, but Alexander already felt the weight of what was to come. He knew it wouldn't be easy. He would have to act smartly, planning each step with care. But one thing was certain: his focus remained on Ava, and on the future she deserved to live. It was her he thought of when doubts arose. It was for her that he wanted to do things differently. The support of the few he trusted, combined with the growing bond between him and Ava, gave him strength even on the days when everything seemed too difficult. It was on a Thursday that Alexander decided it was time to act. He spent days planning a special meeting with the entire restaurant staff, and his anxiety was palpable as he prepared. He kept thinking about how the surprise could change the work environment, and, more importantly, help Ava. "This is going to work," he muttered to himself as he reviewed the message he had sent to everyone at the restaurant. Ava was getting ready for another workday. When she received the notification about the meeting, she was in the kitchen helping to organize deliveries. "Ava, did you see this? The owner of the restaurant has called a meeting for tomorrow," said Anna, a co-worker, as she mixed a salad. Yes, I saw. Do you know what it's about? I was wondering if it's something serious, Ava replied, feeling a cloud of uncertainty hanging over her. Maybe it has to do with the complaints we've been hearing or something. Related to Robert, Anna suggested with a worried look. I hope so. I was thinking that if it's being brought up, it could be something good or very bad. Ava reflected on the tense atmosphere everyone was working in. Other employees joined the conversation, and soon everyone was speculating about what might be happening. No one could shake the idea that it might have something to do with the manager. Robert. The whispers in the back of the kitchen filled the air with anxiety. Maybe it's time to ask for changes. Who knows? One of the employees said almost hopefully. The others nodded but remained skeptical, as the fear of retaliation loomed over them. On the day of the meeting, everyone gathered in the small break room. Alexander observed the faces of his employees, noticing the apprehension in the air. Hello everyone, thank you for coming. This meeting is really important to me, he began, trying to maintain a calm tone. The employees were restless when Alexander entered the meeting room. What was he doing here? The whispers started in every corner, and the air was thick with uncertainty and speculation, especially for Ava. This doesn't look good, Ava whispered to Anna, who was standing next to her. Anna gave a nervous smile and simply nodded, not knowing what to say. Alexander took a deep breath, feeling the tension in the room, and continued. I imagine many of you are wondering why I'm here. I'll get straight to the point. My name is Alexander Martins, and I'm the owner of this restaurant chain. I've been coming here in disguise to understand what's been happening. After observing for some time, I've realized we need significant changes. I want each of you to feel comfortable sharing your opinions. You are the soul of this restaurant, he said, his voice firm and determined. The room buzzed with murmurs. The employees exchanged astonished glances, not knowing what to make of the situation. No one felt comfortable speaking, and Ava in particular was stunned. So Alexander had been pretending to be just a customer, she thought, questioning his real intentions. Why did he choose to approach her this way? Ava's mind was filled with questions, and confusion overwhelmed her. What did he really want? What else could be at stake with this revelation? Her uncertainty made her anxious, and the atmosphere in the room reflected her state of mind. Everyone was eager to understand the real meaning behind Alexander's unexpected presence at the meeting. It was then that Robert, realizing his job was on the line after Alexander's revelation, promptly tried to flatter him. I always suspected there was something special about you, Alexander. Your demeanor has always shown leadership, Robert said, smiling forcefully as he approached. Enough, Robert, Alexander interrupted, his voice firm. Things are going to change around here, and the first change is removing you from the management of this restaurant. You're fired. Leave immediately. Alexander's declaration brought a mix of relief and apprehension among the employees. No one truly liked Robert, but there were doubts about who would take his place. You won't survive without me, Robert shouted, his voice full of anger. This place runs because of me. Actually, Robert, we'll do much better without you. Now please leave my restaurant. HR will be in touch to discuss the details of your departure, Alexander said, maintaining his calm and composure. Robert still tried to argue, but quickly realized he was alone. Without support, he left the restaurant with slumped shoulders and a face red with frustration. A heavy silence settled in, as if everyone there was holding their breath. The employees looked at each other, full of doubts and without the courage to say anything out loud. Alexander was direct. Changes were coming. But no one knew exactly what that meant, and it was this uncertainty that made the air dense, charged with expectation. In the meeting room, the atmosphere was one of shock. Ava stood motionless, as if she needed a few more seconds to process everything. The man she had talked to so many times, who seemed like just another friendly customer, was in fact the owner of everything. A difficult mix of emotions took hold of her. Surprise, a slight touch of hurt, and, stronger than she'd like to admit, admiration. Alexander could have used his position to act with distance and authority, but he chose to go there in disguise, to see with his own eyes, to feel it himself. Why? The question echoed in her mind, but maybe deep down she already knew the answer. Ava wondered, as the murmurs continued around her. Her heart was racing, and her mind was filled with questions. What did this mean for her? What did Alexander really want? As the room buzzed with activity, Alexander noticed Ava's silence. He approached her. "Ava, I know this is a lot to take in. It wasn't easy for me either, believe me. I had my reasons," he said, his voice full of sincerity. Ava felt a tightness in her chest, mixed with a wave of suspicion. "But why didn't you tell me the truth from the beginning?" "Why hide?" she asked, her voice slightly trembling. There was a tone of hurt in her words, and she couldn't hold it back. "I needed to see how things really worked here. I wanted to get to know the team and understand what you all go through every day with the manager's pressure. I knew many of you didn't feel comfortable speaking up," Alexander explained, trying to justify his actions. It made sense, but Ava still felt divided. "So everything we went through together wasn't real? You were just observing me?" she asked, the pain evident in her voice. "No, Ava, that's not how I see it. Everything I did, every interaction we had was real. I admire your determination and your work ethic. You care about every customer, and that makes all the difference," Alexander replied, his gaze intense and sincere. She felt a small spark of hope hearing that, but suspicion still consumed her. "And now? What will happen with Robert gone? Does this mean everything will change? Be realistic, Alexander. How can you promise that things will be different? I understand your concern, Ava. Change doesn't happen overnight, but I'm committed to making it happen," Alexander stated. "And today I want to offer you something special." The tension in the room began to ease as everyone focused on his words. Ava raised an eyebrow, feeling her nerves jangle again. "What do you mean by something special?" "I want to offer you the position of manager. You deserve this opportunity. Your work ethic and character are exactly what we need to change the culture of this place," Alexander explained, his tone firm. Her silence filled the room. Ava was speechless, her heart pounding. "Me? But I have no experience as a manager. I'm just a waitress." Her insecurity was clear in her voice. "You can be a manager who not only gives orders but truly understands the work. You already have a natural leadership ability, and most importantly, you care. You know how to make people feel valued. And that's what really matters," Alexander said. Ava looked around at her colleagues. They all had expressions of encouragement and support, but she still struggled with her own internal doubts. "What if I can't do it? What if everything goes wrong?" she asked, her vulnerability clear. "And what if it goes right?" Alexander asked, a hopeful smile appearing on his face. "This is your chance to shine, Ava. You don't have to do this alone. I'll be by your side. Together, we can create an environment where everyone feels respected and happy." Ava's eyes filled with tears as she thought about what Alexander was offering. It was more than just a position. It was a chance to change her life and the environment around her. But even so, the idea scared her. "I need to think about it," Ava said, her voice trembling as she turned to look out the window, trying not to let the tears fall. Alexander took a step closer. "I understand, and I don't want you to decide right now. But know that I will support you completely. Not just you, but your ideas as well. Together, we can make this work." The employees around them began to stand up, and a wave of support swept through the room. "You've got this, Ava," said a colleague. "You're the best choice," added another employee. Ava felt a warmth in her chest as she realized she wasn't alone. The support she was receiving was genuine and touched her deeply. She took a deep breath, trying to process all the emotions. "Thank you, everyone. You have no idea how much this means to me," she said, her voice trembling. "But I never imagined I'd be in a position like this. All I know is how to wait tables and make sure everyone has a good meal. And you're amazing at it. Being a manager isn't about changing who you are, but about valuing exactly what you already do, respecting people and creating real connections. That's what makes a true leader," Alexander said, seeing her confidence grow with each word. Ava looked at Alexander, the man who had unexpectedly changed her life. "Why do you believe in me so much?" she asked, still full of doubts and insecurities. "Because I see something in you that many others don't. An incredible strength. You're the definition of perseverance, and above all, you care about your children and the people around you. That shines through in everything you do," he replied, his gaze genuine and direct. A silence fell over the room as Ava absorbed Alexander's words. What he said seemed to come from a deep place, and she began to imagine what it would be like to take on the role of manager, even though her mind was still in a storm of questions and fears. I really want to make changes here, but I can't lose focus on my boys. They come first, Ava expressed, her concern evident. And that's exactly what we all admire in you. Your children are your strength, and they will want a mother who shines and fights for her dreams. The manager position can be a way for you to build a better future, not just for yourself, but for them too, Alexander emphasized, his words seeming to touch something deep within her heart. I want to try, but I can't promise I'll be perfect, Ava said, finally opening up to the possibility. Don't worry about perfection. What matters is that you allow yourself to try and grow. We will all be here to support you. We will build a strong team where everyone feels valued. Alexander encouraged, noticing she was taking an important step forward. Alexander's words brought a hesitant smile to Ava's face. Maybe this is my chance to finally make a difference, she thought, feeling the idea gain strength within her. When you're ready, we can sit down and talk about how to put some changes into practice. How about we turn these ideas into reality, together, Alexander said with a welcoming smile. Yes, of course I'd like that, Ava replied finally, feeling a mix of nervousness and excitement blossom inside her. With a new sense of determination, Ava turned to her colleagues, now certain that they would be part of her journey. Thank you for believing in me. I'm ready to do my best, and I hope we can all work together to make this place something special. Ava's words were met with applause and cheers of support. The atmosphere in the room changed. The employees were energized by the idea of a new beginning, a new chapter not just for Ava, but for all of them. As Alexander watched the scene, he felt increasingly convinced that supporting Ava had been the right choice. This was her moment to shine, and he hoped that together they could transform the restaurant and create an environment where every employee felt valued and respected. Although the journey was just beginning, Ava felt she had the strength and support to move forward. Deep down, she knew she had gained more than just a new job. She had found new hope, a new purpose, and was ready to embark on this new adventure, not just as a determined mother, but as a rising leader. After a turbulent day full of revelations, Ava sat at the kitchen table, watching the twins play with their building blocks. The decision to accept the manager position was still fresh in her mind, and she felt as if she were about to embark on an unknown journey, full of challenges and opportunities. Will I be good enough? Ava asked herself, her heart heavy with the responsibility she was about to take on. She knew that becoming the new manager would mean changes not only in her work routine but also in her personal life, something her children would surely feel. I hope I can be a manager they'll be proud of. Ava whispered more to herself than to the boys. The memory of Alexander's support and belief in her came to mind, warming her heart. However, doubts about trust and second chances still lingered. The fact that Alexander had hidden his identity was still something she needed to process, but she couldn't deny that he seemed sincere in his intentions to change the restaurant. Despite everything, Ava began to see second chances as a gift. We all make mistakes. Maybe this is my chance to start over and move on. Alexander seemed genuinely interested in being an ally, Ava thought, allowing herself to examine the possibilities with optimism. The next day, a meeting was scheduled with Alexander to discuss the first steps in restructuring the restaurant. As she walked towards his office, a wave of nervousness turned into determination. It was time to see how they could transform the place together. When Ava entered the room, Alexander was organizing some papers on his desk. He looked up and smiled when he saw her. Ava, I'm so glad you came. Please have a seat, he said, gesturing to a nearby chair. Thank you, Alexander, Ava replied as she sat down, trying to calm her racing heart. I've been thinking a lot about what we discussed and how we can make the restaurant a better place for everyone. Alexander nodded, clearly pleased. I'm glad to hear that. I want you to know that you will have all the support you need to implement your ideas. This is the time to build a healthy and respectful work environment. Ava took a deep breath, finding courage in his words. I think we can start with some simple changes, like offering training sessions for the team, so everyone feels like they're growing in their roles. Perfect! I think that will give everyone a sense of value and personal growth. And what about the work environment? Is there anything you think we should address immediately? Alexander asked, listening intently. Yes, I think we need to work on communication among everyone. Holding regular meetings could help keep everyone on the same page and avoid misunderstandings, Ava suggested. Feeling more confident as she shared her ideas, Alexander immediately agreed. That sounds like a great way to ensure everyone feels heard and included. Your perspective is really refreshing, Ava. She smiled, feeling energized. The shadows of doubt began to fade in the face of Alexander's clear support. And regarding strategies to attract more customers, I was thinking about local campaigns that could highlight our signature dishes and the welcoming atmosphere we want to create, Ava proposed. That's absolutely perfect. We need to let customers know about the new environment we're building, Alexander replied, impressed with her ideas. The meeting continued, and Ava felt the barriers between them breaking down. Alexander was no longer just the boss. He had become a genuine ally, someone determined to build something bigger and better alongside her. When the meeting ended, Ava stood up, grateful for the clear direction and tangible support she felt. Thank you, Alexander. I know we have a long way to go, but I feel encouraged by all of this, she said sincerely, and I'm grateful to have you by my side on this journey. Together we'll make this work, Alexander replied, his tone full of conviction and optimism. As she left the office, Ava realized that the path ahead wouldn't be easy, but she was ready to face it with courage and confidence, not just for herself, but to create a better future for her children and for the entire team that now depended on her leadership. Ava was determined to transform the restaurant into a place where everyone felt valued and part of a big family. When she got home, Ava felt reinvigorated. Ideas were flowing, and the anxiety she had felt earlier had been replaced by a sense of purpose. She knew she would have to balance her new responsibilities with her personal life, but she was confident she could do it. That night, as she put the boys to bed, Ava thought about how unpredictable life could be. In just a few days, everything she knew had changed. Yet here she was, ready to face a new challenge with the support of Alexander and her team. After the twins finally fell asleep, Ava sat in silence in the darkness of the room, reflecting on how far she had come, on the struggles and the victories. She knew the path ahead would be full of obstacles, but also of opportunities. With a deep sigh and a satisfied smile, Ava got up and adjusted the blankets around their peaceful bodies. She felt grateful for second chances, for those who believed in her, and for being in a position to show that, with determination and support, anyone can achieve great things. As she lay down that night, Ava finally felt that she was ready for anything the future held. She was confident, not only in what she would achieve as a manager, but in the lessons she would pass on to her children, that dreams are possible and that determination and kindness should never be underestimated. The restaurant would become not just a workplace, but a space for growth, change and hope for everyone, and this was just the beginning. The next morning, Ava woke up feeling excited but nervous. The new responsibility weighed on her shoulders, but she was determined. After getting ready and making breakfast, she looked at the twins and smiled. She thought about how this was a new chapter and how she was now truly ready to make a difference. At work, at the restaurant, Ava was determined to change the atmosphere. As soon as she arrived, she did a quick assessment of the space, imagining how the tables could be arranged to feel more welcoming. "Good morning, team," she called out as she entered, while the team watched her with anticipation. "Good morning, Ava." They all replied in unison, some still looking a little hesitant. Ava could feel the anxiety in the room, but she also noticed a new energy in the air. "I'd like to meet with everyone in the next few minutes," Ava said, with confidence in her voice. "I have some ideas I'd like to share." During the meeting, Ava spoke about the importance of open communication and teamwork. "I want this to be a place where everyone feels valued. We can achieve this together. We'll start having weekly meetings to discuss what each of us can do to contribute and improve our work environment," she explained. observing her colleagues' reactions. Some team members started nodding and smiling, encouraged to share their thoughts. "That sounds great, Ava. It's something we all needed," said Anna, one of the more experienced waitresses. "I've been thinking about some ways to improve our service techniques." "Wonderful. Bring your ideas next week. I want to hear from everyone," Ava replied, enthusiastically, feeling her confidence grow with each word. It seemed she had finally found her place. After the meeting, Alexander approached Ava with a supportive smile. "You did a great job leading the meeting. The team seems genuinely excited about your proposals," he said. "Thank you, Alexander. I feel like I'm starting to see the difference we can make together. And it was great to see the team so receptive," she replied, her eyes shining with optimism. "And I can see how much you're growing." "You're becoming a natural leader," he commented, observing her with admiration. Ava felt a warmth rise to her cheeks at his words. As the days passed, Ava adapted to her new role, and her working relationship with Alexander deepened. They collaborated closely, sharing ideas and developing new strategies for the restaurant. Alexander often stopped by Ava's office to discuss plans, and with each conversation, the connection between them grew stronger. One afternoon, while they were reviewing a new menu, Ava glanced at Alexander. "You know, I was thinking of adding a new dessert, something that reflects our identity. Maybe a chocolate cake with a special touch," she suggested, smiling. "That sounds delicious. But what would make it special?" Alexander asked, his gaze fixed on hers. The energy between them made Ava feel a flutter in her stomach. "Maybe a little orange zest to give it a fresh twist," Ava pondered aloud, her eyes meeting his. In that moment, they both felt something deeper between them, something beyond the professional realm. The connection continued to grow, and their interactions became increasingly personal. One evening, as the team was preparing to close, Ava turned to Alexander and said, "You've been a great support to me. I don't know how I would have managed all this without you." Alexander smiled, the sincerity evident in his expression. "I'm just doing my part, but I'm also amazed at the strength you've shown. You should be proud of yourself." "I am, but it's not just that. Having someone like you by my side has made all the difference," Ava admitted, feeling the depth of the conversation. Alexander hesitated for a moment, as if carefully choosing his words. "Ava, you are an incredible woman, and you've become such an important part, not just of the restaurant, but of my life. I feel that what we have is something really special." Her heart skipped a beat. She couldn't deny that there was something more between them, something that had grown both personally and professionally. "So many changes. I didn't expect this, but it's been wonderful," Ava said with a shy smile. "I feel like I'm finally finding my way, and you've been an essential part of that." The tension in the air was almost palpable as Alexander held her gaze. He moved a little closer. "If you're open to it, I'd like to explore this connection further, not just as colleagues, but as something more. I feel there's a chemistry between us that we can't ignore." Ava felt the butterflies in her stomach again. "Alexander, I feel it too, but this is all so new. I'm adjusting to being a manager and balancing my life with the boys. I don't want anything to interfere with that," she replied, her voice tinged with hesitation. "I understand, but I don't want this to feel like pressure for you. I'm willing to wait as long as you need. At the same time, I want you to know that I'm here to support you in all aspects of your life," Alexander said, his voice calm and reassuring. Ava looked at him, her heart racing. "That means a lot to me. I'm just worried about what might happen if we mix work and personal life. I don't want to complicate things for you or for the team. I know you're cautious, and I'd love to get to know you better outside of work. Maybe we could go out for coffee or dinner sometime. No pressure, just two people spending time together," Alexander suggested. The idea sounded nice, but it also made her nervous. "That would be nice. Yes, we can talk more about it. But I need some time to think," Ava replied, allowing herself to imagine a lighter, happier future by his side. "Of course, no pressure. Just let me know when you're ready," Alexander said with a smile. He took a step back, giving Ava space to process what was happening, but still making it clear that he was there for her. That night, as Ava tucked the boys into bed, her thoughts were more focused on Alexander than on anything else. She had achieved so much in the past few months, She had taken on the management role with a courage she never knew she possessed. The team, once unmotivated, now worked alongside her, inspired by her firm but gentle leadership. She had transformed not only the restaurant's processes but also the atmosphere among the staff. Everything there was beginning to reflect her essence: empathy, commitment, and a passion for what she did. And Alexander remained nearby, not as a demanding boss, but as someone who had believed in her from the very beginning. He would discreetly attend meetings, ask thoughtful questions, and offer suggestions with care, never imposing, only offering. "You've been handling everything brilliantly, Ava," he once said after a team meeting. "It's beautiful to watch, really." She would thank him with a smile, but inside, she felt a confusion that was hard to explain. She knew he cared. She could feel it in his gestures, his gaze, the way he treated her, as if she were the only person in the room. But now, with everything she had accomplished on her own, she wasn't sure if she wanted to take the risk. She feared that a relationship might divert her focus from what she had worked so hard to build. She was afraid people would start saying she only got where she was because of him, even though she knew it wasn't true. And more than that, there was a silent fear of opening her heart and losing the balance she had fought so hard to achieve. But Alexander seemed to understand. He didn't pressure her. He was just there, constant and respectful. Whenever she needed support, he was there. When the kitchen had issues with suppliers, he intervened firmly, but let Ava take the lead. When she decided to train the team with new methods, he just smiled and said, "It's your show. I trust you." And those words touched her deeply. One afternoon, at the end of the day, she found a small note left on her desk. "You are transforming this place, Ava, with courage, with soul. It's an honor to walk by your side, even if only from a distance." She held the paper in her fingers for minutes, feeling the weight of the words between the lines. He wasn't demanding. He was waiting, not like someone expecting an immediate answer, but like someone who respects another's time. For Ava, that was rare. The weeks went on, the restaurant thrived, and customers praised the new atmosphere. The team smiled more, and Alexander was still there, celebrating every victory from afar, but with his heart growing ever closer. Ava was beginning to realize that maybe love didn't have to be an obstacle. Maybe, if built with respect and lightness, it could be a bridge, not a detour. She didn't have all the answers yet, but for the first time, she no longer felt afraid to ask the right question. What if it's possible to have both, the dream and the love? It was the end of the workday, and Ava was still finishing up her reports when Alexander appeared at her office door. He leaned gently against the doorframe, watching her with that calm yet intense gaze she was starting to know so well. "Can I come in?" She nodded with a slight smile, pushing a stack of papers aside. "Of course." Alexander approached slowly, hands in his pockets, as if choosing his words carefully. "Ava," he began, his voice low and steady, "we've been walking side by side for a while now, and it's been beautiful to watch you grow, to see you become stronger. I admire every step you take. But there's also something more, something we can't pretend isn't here." Ava glanced away for a second, trying to hide the blush on her cheeks. He continued with tenderness, "I have feelings for you, something more. And I know you feel it too." She didn't respond immediately, but her eyes said it all. It was true. She just didn't know how to handle it. "Let's start slowly," he said, moving a little closer, but maintaining a respectful distance. No rush, no pressure, just living whatever is possible to live. "How about we start with a dinner somewhere else, away from all this? Away from the spreadsheets, the uniforms, the curious glances. Just you and me." Ava bit the corner of her lip, thoughtful. The offer stirred everything inside her. Part of her wanted to accept immediately. Another part wanted to protect herself. "Alexander," she said, her voice soft, "if we're going to do this, it has to be light. Without involving the boys yet, without mixing it with the restaurant. I need to feel that I can trust this path without fearing that everything will fall apart if it doesn't work out." He nodded immediately. "That's how I want it too. With calm, with truth, without pressure. Just you, in your own time." She took a deep breath, as if finally allowing herself to let her guard down. Okay then, let's have dinner. The smile that bloomed on Alexander's face was the most genuine she had ever seen. Saturday, I'll pick you up. And just like that, with simple words and meaningful glances, a new chapter began to be written. Saturday arrived like a warm breeze at the end of a busy day. Ava had left the boys with her mother. For the first time in a long time, she dedicated some time just for herself. She chose a simple but beautiful dress, let her hair down, and applied a touch of lip gloss. Looking in the mirror, she saw not just a beautiful woman, but a whole woman, one who had been through so much and was still standing firm, starting over. Alexander arrived right on time. When he saw her coming down the stairs, he stood in silence for a few seconds, admiring her. It wasn't just her appearance, it was the strength she carried in her eyes. He extended his hand, and she accepted it with a discreet but meaningful smile. "Ready?" he asked. "Yes, I'm ready." The restaurant was cozy, with low lights and candles on the tables. Soft music filled the air, and for the first time in a long time, Ava felt light. They talked for hours about simple and profound things, childhood dreams, fears. They laughed together, they got emotional. It was as if there, away from the world, they could just be themselves. At one point, Alexander gently took Ava's hand across the table. She didn't pull it away. On the contrary, she intertwined her fingers with his naturally. "I know life hasn't been easy for you," he said, his eyes fixed on hers. "And I'm not here to promise you perfection, but I'm here to try to walk by your side, to respect your time, your children, your story, and if you let me, to build something real with you." Ava felt her eyes well up. There was so much care in his words, so much respect. She took a deep breath, trying to contain her emotion. "I'm still scared, but I'm also willing. Willing to try, and that's more than I ever imagined I'd feel again." It was then that he leaned in slowly and delicately kissed her. It wasn't an urgent or rehearsed kiss. It was sincere, a kiss that seemed to seal a new beginning. On the way back, the silence in the car was comfortable, their fingers still intertwined, as if neither of them wanted to let go. When they reached her building, Ava turned to him and said with a calm smile, "Alexander, let's take it slow, okay?" "With all the calm in the world," he replied, gently touching her face. She went inside with a warm heart, and that night, she slept with a peace she hadn't known for a long time. In the days that followed, Alexander remained present but not invasive. Ava continued to thrive as a manager, learning and growing. They met when they could, sometimes just to walk in the park, sometimes for a quiet coffee. And so, without rushing, they built something solid, made of respect, affection, and care. Ava's children gradually got to know Alexander, first as a friend and then as someone who was part of their days. The restaurant changed. Ava's leadership was inspiring. Alexander's decisions transformed the environment. Together, they created not just a new business, but a new story. Because sometimes love doesn't arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it comes slowly at the exact pace of someone who has learned that what is true doesn't need to rush time. And that's how Ava and Alexander discovered that, even with so many scars, it was still possible to start over, together. And so ends the journey of Ava and Alexander. A story that proved to us that true nobility isn't in money, but in character. And that a love born from courage flourishes in justice and happiness. Now it's your turn. Tell me in the comments, what did you admire most about Ava's journey? Give this story a rating from 0 to 10, and let me know which city you're watching from. I love to see how far our stories travel. Your like and subscription are the fuel that allows me to keep bringing stories that, like this one, renew our faith in love and resilience. Don't forget to hit that notification bell. May God bless your life and your home immensely.